Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this session of Meet the Controller. Peter Fincham, Director of Television for the ITV network. He needs very little introduction, but you will know he's been in the post since 2008. Prior to that, at the BBC, where he was controller for 2 years, and before that, Talkback, where he was for what, some 20 years?
20 years.
Yeah. How's your festival been? How was yesterday? Because I was so gutted that I never got to see it. And my first question to you, so I have one important question for you today. Did Keith Lemon actually simulate oral sex or ask you to do it onto him? What happened yesterday?
The honest truth is I have no idea. It's been a very strange experience because very generously lots of people have come up to me and say, well done, you did so well. But I didn't do anything. Something was done to me.
I was quite troubled by that quote when someone told me that.
At the key moment when I was lying down on the stage and he said, put your legs apart, I thought, I don't know what you're about to do and I don't want to know, so I just shut my eyes. I just lay there with my eyes shut. And then I kind of heard laughter and then it was over. And there we go.
And I trust you'd never accept an invitation to go on stage with him again? Or?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Keith Lemon, and obviously he does Celebrity Juice for us on ITV2. And his new show, which was on last night, if anybody here hasn't seen it, I honestly just think it's I think it's a fantastic show called Lemon La Vida Loco. It's a kind of, it's a weird mixture of a brilliantly accurate send-up of that whole reality genre, and yet it's also a sort of sitcom, and a rather touching sitcom about him and his poor, long-suffering girlfriend who moves down from Leeds. And so, obviously, I'm a big fan of him. Again, lots of people said to me, had you any idea what you were letting yourself in for? Well, yes, I had. I mean, obviously, I've seen Celebrity Juice many times. It's not designed to make the guests comfortable. It's designed to make fun of them. So
yeah.
Anyway.
No, all credit to you. It went down very well. Sorry.
You see.
Do you know what? Let's just leave it there.
It's infectious.
I know, it is. Okay, let's take a look back. We'll talk about the future, obviously, but we'll just start by taking a look back at your highlights for the past year. How do you reflect on the past year? Good year, great year?
I think, I mean, whenever you kind of watch a tape with that, you think, oh, what a lot of great stuff in all genres. So good year. Also challenges, and there's plenty of challenges around at any one time. This has been a challenging year in particular ways that I'm sure you're going to come onto anyway. So
why
don't I raise them now? This is a year of exceptional national events and unique actually. I mean, we won't have another year that has a Diamond Jubilee and an Olympics, a London-based Olympics in 1 year. And those events make it a remarkable year for the BBC, particularly the Olympics, which of course is a BBC entirely covered by the BBC, and in terms of a thing that is part of kind of our language at ITV, year-on-year comparisons, this will affect that. But I did. But we take a long view of it, and we hope a very strong autumn schedule coming up. So the year is not over, and then 2013 is another year. But this has been an unusual year. Yes, I did. I went to the opening ceremony, and I went one other time to the main stadium to an athletics night, and it was a fantastic national event, and it would be entirely wrong for me as the director of television at ITV to sit here and gainsay it in any way at all. The BBC did a fine job of covering it. I mean, if I can turn it, without sort of sounding glib, if I can turn a positive out of it from an ITV point of view, it proved once again that there's an appetite for big events on television to be enjoyed by enormous audiences, and that if you want to get the nation together to celebrate something, to enjoy something, then television has to play a crucial role to that. In other words, it was a story, it was a good news story about television, and although it was a better news story for the BBC than for us, just in terms of ratings and in those 2 weeks.
The audience is there.
It's absolutely. And I don't think it does any, in that sense, I don't think it does us any harm in the longer term. But
did it make you think about sporting events that you're holes in your schedule for the coming?
Well, we have, I mean, we're very committed to sport, and we have a portfolio of football, which I think is not only better than we've ever had, but I think it's better than any broadcaster's ever had. You know, we have the Champions League, we have England internationals, we have the Europa League, and we have the FA Cup. That's a lot of live football on ITV1. We also do the Rugby World Cup, which we did with great success last year, and in 2015, which admittedly is a little bit of a way away now, that's in England. So we can look forward to something really strong and unique for us there. But we've also been busily, and maybe a bit quietly, I don't know, you know how much people are aware of this, developing ITV4 as a channel of sport. And in particular, I felt when I came to ITV, there was a lot of novelty sport on ITV4, kind of veterans games and things like that. And I thought, no, ITV4 needs to be in legitimate sports and tournaments that, you know, that matter to people. So for the first time this year, we did the French Open tennis and got remarkable figures for it. We did the Tour de France, and we have later this year the Tour of Britain and the Tour of Spain. Yeah. So in a sense, cycling is us. You know, we had Bradley Wiggins.
You're almost having to find these new sports now to adopt.
I mean, cycling is not new.
I'm thinking of the audience in terms of those people who are going to be wanting to pitch to you. Where would those avenues be opening up now in terms of sport then?
Well, the sports rights market is a very specialist market, and you know, the simple truth about the sports rights market is everybody talks to everybody about everything all the time. And sometimes you read stories that I read one the other day that we're in talks with BT about doing Premier League football. Well, we're not, as it happens, but because they all meet at games and talk to each other about it all the time. But we have been pursuing a policy of where we can. A couple of years ago, we picked up the rights to the IPL Premier League, the IPL Indian Premier League cricket, which does fantastically well for us and reaches different sorts of audiences than we often do on ITV4. As I say, cycling sort of is us. Now we have the French Open. You know, we want to do more in that area. I think there's a really important role for ITV across ITV1 and ITV4 as both at the very popular end of sport and interesting sports playing to particular audiences, free-to-air, of course, and ITV4 is one of the main free-to-air sports channels. But to come back to your kind of original question, does it make me think that the Olympics would have been right for us? Well, do you know, if I'm being completely honest, I think it was probably right for the BBC, able to do a very large range of channels, completely rip up their schedule, in a way that, let's say, Wimbledon's right for the BBC. I don't think we're suddenly going to go.
Saying ITV couldn't have done it as well as the BBC because of the scale of the event. I don't mean that in a facetious way.
No, I don't mean that at all. I think that where we cover big sport, I mean, well, there's very recently been a very direct comparison, which is the Euros. I mean, God, time passes so quickly. That's only a couple of months ago. It feels like an age ago now. And in the Euros, for one thing, our top-rated show, which got over 18.5, top-rated game, which got over 18.5 million viewers, because we had two of the England games in the group stages, rated absolutely at the same level as BBC games, which demonstrates that for a big national event like an England football game in a big tournament, just as many people have come to ITV and BBC. But I also feel that our coverage of that, where we were in Warsaw from the beginning of the tournament with our studio, with a fantastic line of punters, including Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher, who we thought were really, really good punters, our coverage of it, I thought was the best coverage of it. And I think a lot of people, and there was a lot of commentators said that. So yes, where we cover sport, we want to cover it well. Of course we do.
Yeah. Okay. Now, commitment to factual programming. Yeah. Has that commitment, and it has been, you've had a hugely successful year. I mean, Strange Ways, Holloway, 9/11, Long Lost Family, Bomber Command I spoke to you about. You've got a new fan in my husband who thought it was one of the best things he's seen in a fair while. Have you begun to change the way that ITV is perceived by viewers? Was that the intention, and do you think that you've done it?
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's for others to say. I certainly hope we've... I mean, I think in a way, I've been lucky, or we've been lucky, that 7 Up has come round this year, because obviously it comes around every 7 years. And this year we had 56 up, which was brilliant. And I'm glad to say, by the way, that Michael Apted, who is the father of that series, is here in Edinburgh. He's doing a session, and it was fantastic, if you like, to rekindle that relationship. And it's worth reminding ourselves, and some people may know, some people may not know, that 2 series ago, ITV let it go to the BBC. Now, I found that hard to believe, that after 7 up, 14 up, 21 up, etc., you get to whatever 2 series would have been 42 up, if my maths is right, and they say, do we think this is us? No, I don't think it's us. Let's let the BBC have it. I wouldn't do that in a month of Sundays. I think it's one of the most wonderful, television documentary experiments of all time.
Let's just remind ourselves of it then, 56 up. Wonderful. Matthew Bell in The Independent had this to say about it. Created at a time when producers wanted to make grandstanding statements about society, and Granada was as radical as the BBC was stuffy. Watching in 2012, it rather sticks out of ITV's schedule to remind us of that channel's mould-breaking past. That's something you want to recreate, ITV seen as a mould breaker. Well,
I don't think we should think in terms of, can we take ITV back to the glory days of Granada? There were great things in the glory days of Granada. I think we obviously should think, how do we take ITV forward?
Would you have been brave enough to commission it, do you think, then?
Well, I'd like to think so, but who knows? But what I do feel very strongly is that if you lock yourself into a mindset that says ITV is only, one is only about ratings, 2 is only about the most populist genres, you will end up with a thinner and poorer ITV. And actually, that will be a less commercially successful ITV. So you have to take a broader and longer view and say that, of course, ITV's commitment to the popular genres, entertainment, popular drama, is as strong as ever and will remain as strong as ever. But what we do in Factual, what we do in journalism, is as important, and it has to be treated as important. So, in the last year or 2, we've started an art strand in Perspectives. We started a current affairs strand, which is back this autumn, in Exposure, a political discussion program in Tom Bradley's The Agenda. None of those things are legislated for us to do. No quota from Ofcom is telling us to do that.
So where's the drive come from?
The drive's coming from me and the Factual team and the current affairs commissioning team of saying, we want to move the dial. We want people to reconsider ITV in these areas, as well as in the areas of entertainment, comedy, and drama.
Why? Just to make you a more rounded channel? What's the thinking behind it if you're saying ratings aren't the driving force?
Yes, because I think a more rounded channel will be a more successful channel. I think that channels that have the full range of genres are proportionately rarer than they ever were. In the days when you had 2 or 3 or even 4 channels, they all did a full range of genres. Now that you have 250, most of them don't at all. Most of them effectively are niche channels doing the same thing over and over again. And it's only the big channels that can have the range and breadth to do everything from the hardest hitting current affairs to the fluffiest entertainment, if you like. And that's part of what defines ITV1.
You need returnables, though.
Yes.
So you've got long lost families, which is one example. What else are you doing? And again, I want to really consider the audience today in terms of what are you looking for and how key are the returnables in the Factual?
They're terribly key. I think we're rightly very proud of Long Lost Family. One of the things I love about that series, I love television that does something in the world. It actually does reunite families. There is a takeaway for the people who get involved in it. Would we like more things like what Long Lost Family? You bet we would. They're incredibly hard to find. Incredibly hard to find that you believe will appeal to a broad mainstream audience. If you're running BBC One, to a large degree, you cherry pick those from BBC Two. When I was at BBC One, two series that are still on BBC One came over from BBC Two, The Apprentice and Who Do You Think You Are? I don't think they'd have started on BBC One. But the ITV family of channels isn't structured the same way as the BBC. ITV2 is aimed at a much younger audience, the kind of Keith Lemon audience, if you like. And we aren't able to afford the amount of original commissioning that you would need on a secondary channel to create a nursery slope for ITV1. So for us, it's got to land straight on ITV1. And they're really hard to find. And if you were to say, we have lots of things we want to do in Factual, but if you were to put a list together and put number one at the top of it, it would be to say a returnable format of the long-lost family type. It mustn't look as if it's a sort of our version of somebody else's similar show. No easier way to sort of die a quick and grisly death on ITV1 than to sort of say, well, we like that, let's do our own version of it. So it's got to strike out into territory that's our territory and then kind of, if you like, own that territory. And I'll be honest with you, that's really hard. Yeah. And we get lots of proposals, but you've got to think about the mainstream audience and that broader audience, and they're really hard to find.
As you say, it's hard to define.
If I'm putting out a message, yes, of course, we love that.
All right, well, welcome your thoughts on that. Do keep tweeting. I'm trying to keep refreshing this just in case you are responding to what Peter's saying, so I'll keep an eye on it. Drama, is it a golden age? I mean, nice, easy lob for you, because really you have had some phenomenal successes with drama on ITV.
I think...
We saw a number of them there with Appropriate Adult. I mean, Laura Mackie, you must have been thrilled when she picked up the Judges Award from the RTS this year.
I was obviously absolutely delighted, and I think that drama... I'd hesitate to use the word golden age, but it's in pretty rude health, original drama in the UK. Drama producers, not least because of Sky's enormous investment, have never had it so good. I mean, in the balance of buying and selling, it's my job and it's our job to go out and sell ITV to people and say, please bring us your best projects, because we know perfectly well that there's Sky, there's BBC One, there's also Channel 4, and who knows where else, and there's BBC Two as well. Who knows where else there'll be original drama commissioned? And I think, yes, there's we're during a period in which there's a kind of rich vein of drama production, great writers, great producers, great directors.
Why do you think Titanic didn't do as well? I mean, Archie and Adam are probably very happy because you sold it to over 100 countries worldwide, but the viewers themselves, that was one of the ones that stuck out perhaps as being less successed. Why do you think that was?
Its opening episode got one of the biggest drama audiences of the year.
7.4 million.
And that was great. And the way it was constructed, which was to tell the story, if you like, 4 times from 4 different perspectives. I don't know, maybe people then thought, well, I'm coming back to see the story again, and I've already seen it, although in fact they saw completely different stories each time.
I mean, I thought that was interesting, as you say, because it dropped to half, I think, by episode 3. But given that it was a success for ITV PLC, would that have an impact on the commissioning process in the future, that you might think, well, it might not do as well, but actually if we get to sell it, then we're all happy?
Not really. I mean, my job, our job in the commissioning team is to keep ITV1 successful. And if we started thinking, well, it won't work for us, but it'll work in Hungary or somewhere, it would be bonkers to go down that road. But I mean, to come back to your question, speculating on why something falls away is a bit like saying you know exactly why something is a huge hit. I can't honestly tell you. We were proud of Titanic. We thought it was a fantastic production.
Well, what lessons did you learn?
I remain proud of Titanic. I don't know, there could be a scheduling lesson in there. I don't know. We thought it was right to play it on 4 successive Sundays, and that if we concentrated it together, that would be kind of too much of a good thing. I'm not answering it very well, Kate, because I honestly don't know.
It's pretty important, though, isn't it? To learn a lesson, it might well...
Yes. I mean, I think that what Titanic was and successfully was a big drama event, and I think that most drama series run in weekly series. ITV is the channel of big events, whether you're talking about Britain's Got Talent or I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And we've done some very successful strip dramas over a week, which is also done at the BBC. So I think it's absolutely the right thing to do to come up with drama events, which aren't therefore the kind of 6 or 8 part series or the 8 or 10 part series. So again, there's range and variety in the schedule, and Titanic was absolutely that. You're asking me what lesson one takes away from it. Well, I don't know, because I can't imagine anything quite like that. It's rather unique to itself. I can't imagine anything quite like that's going to come around anytime too soon.
Elaine is in here. This morning, Elaine Bedell said that comedy, not this morning actually, I've got a quote from Elaine. She said something else which I'm going to refer to, but comedy needs to raise its game. You'd agree with that. You've spoken about it as well. And if we look at Sky and the successes Sky has had, envious?
Well, I think that I think comedy is slightly on ITV's conscience, if you like, because
you mentioned it last year, didn't you?
It's a mainstream genre. We ought to be in it. We have very successful comedy in Benidorm, which came back with its most recent series, I think, with its best ever audience. We have comedy entertainment of the Harry Hill sort, but we're not enough in narrative comedy, whether that's half-hour sitcoms or half-hour kind of audience or non-audience sitcoms, or longer-form comedy drama. And I think we've been putting a lot of time into, looking at how we can raise our game there. We've got quite a bit in the pipeline.
Panel shows?
Well, panel shows, again, we've tried out 1 or 2 panel shows. We tried out 1 or 2 panel show pilots. You tend to think of the panel show as more predominantly a BBC form, and God knows I used to make lots of them when I was talkback. But there's absolutely no reason why a panel show shouldn't work on ITV. I can remember, this is probably going about 6 or 7 years, talking to Mark Thompson when he was the chief executive of Channel 4, and I was at talkback and I was trying to flog him, whatever I was trying to flog him at the time. So I said, Mark, what about panel shows? And he sort of said very wisely to me, it's a BBC thing, panel shows, they never work on Channel 4. The next year, they had 8 out of 10 cats, and it's still running to this day. You only need one.
So where's your 8 out of 10
well,
cats
indeed,
going to come from?
Where is it? We'd love to find it. You'd only need one panel show to say they sit perfectly happily
So
on
again,
ITV.
suggestions on a postcard, please.
There's also an important point for sitcoms here and for half-hour comedy, that at 9 o'clock, which is the best point in our schedule to put this sort of thing, if you have a half-hour narrative comedy, you need something else for the other half hour. A panel show and a sitcom go very well together.
Yeah. 2
sitcoms, when we launch 2 sitcoms together, that would be very high risk. I'm not saying we wouldn't be very high risk. So I would love to have, when we say panel show can mean many things, but I'd love to have some sort of formatted comedy show of that sort.
But
so
it doesn't
that it
sound like you've got any of that in the pipeline.
No, we're at any one time we're developing things, we're doing pilots and so on and so forth, but I wouldn't pretend that we have found the one that we need.
So where's Stuart getting it right then?
Well, Stuart is it's a slightly different game that Stuart is doing.
He's doing very well though, isn't he?
Sky are commissioning lots of stuff, and among it is lots of good stuff. You have to remember that Sky is based on a different model, and it's not, if you like, exposed to the same pressure of audience size and ratings as ITV is. So
he doesn't have a David Berg with his ruling with an iron fist in the scheduling then that's perhaps inhibiting that.
No, I wouldn't describe that as an inhibition, but ITV1 is a mainstream channel, and a mainstream channel, success on a mainstream channel, comes in lots of different forms. It's about the quality of your program. It's about how it resonates with audiences. But you can't entirely ignore, does a decent-sized audience come to it? You can't feel successful at 9 o'clock on ITV1 unless you get a decent-sized audience. Sky's business model is a subscription-based business model where, Sky Atlantic, and I absolutely don't want to get into a Sky-knocking thing here at all, Sky Atlantic was probably the most trumpeted channel launch of the last year or two in terms of marketing budget. I think it had a bigger marketing budget than one of our digital channels, program budgets. Sky Atlantic, some nights of the week, will be watched by 15,000 people. Really, you're talking about a very different model indeed. So when you say Sky are having a lot of success in comedy and drama, you are measuring it in a different way.
So where would the openings, let's say in the schedule, be for potential panel shows, sitcoms?
Well, I think that one kind of nettle we may need to grasp here is that at 9 o'clock on ITV we tend to play hour-long programmes. And we have done for quite a number of years now. In fact, I think almost since I've been at ITV, we've never played 2 half hours. And there's a logic to that, because I think an ITV audience at 9 o'clock sort of wants a main course. It wants something quite substantial. That's why a drama can work so well. A great factual programme can work very well at 9 o'clock. I think what we may need to do, and if we had the pieces to put the jigsaw together here, we would do, is to say, no, we'll play 2 half-hour programmes at 9 o'clock and 9:30. And then you want them to have range and variety within them, which is why you don't want to put all your eggs in one particular basket. So the same sitcom and a panel show or something similar to that could be a very, very good mixture. But you've got to find them. And you've got to find them that are right to play straight away to a mainstream audience. And that is a different model from the Sky model.
Okay, ratings now. ITV's ratings have dropped in the past 12 months, and that was up to just prior to the Olympics, so already that's an obvious one. But between January and July, numbers dropped by just over 4.5% numbers and total share. Why, and what can you do to get the viewers back?
Well, I think that we've obviously now pretty much reached the point of digital switchover. And so if you take a long view of this, over many, many years, the terrestrial channels, so-called terrestrial channels, we should stop calling them that soon, have been adjusting to a multi-channel world, and therefore their shares have tended to go down. And all the time I've been in the business of running mainstream channels, they've tended to go down a bit year by year. That's slowed down a lot. In fact, last year, in the case of ITV1, we were pretty much flat. We've gone down a bit this year. I mean, the Olympics obviously will have made a difference to that. Remember, we already had the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, which undoubtedly, in terms of just audience size, favoured the BBC, getting away from that. We have actually gone down for what it's worth. I'm not desperate to get into a kind of competitive thing here, but we've gone down less than Channel 4. Within the commercial landscape, I think we've done well. I think we're in the last stages of that transition to a digital Britain. But I think we also realise that everybody getting multi-channel television isn't necessarily in itself the end of the story. The habit of watching it continues to grow. And I don't think we're yet at that point where you say, this is now a stable universe. You could argue it'll never be a stable universe, because as soon as everybody's got multi-channel, then other kind of disruptive things like the iPlayer and all forms of time-shifted viewing come along. And so the likelihood is that the landscape will continue to change. Our job within that is to attract the best audiences we can, hold share, and we'd very much like to grow share. And in particular areas,
can you do that with your current offerings, particularly in terms of the Saturday night? I mean, if we talk about the X Factor ratings, how much longer does the X Factor have?
Oh, gosh, the X Factor's here for a long time.
What do you mean, oh, gosh? I mean, the figures are down on X Factor.
Come on,
it does not have a...
No. I mean, last Saturday's X Factor was more than twice the size of the next biggest show on television.
But still way down from what it was.
Well, it was down a bit from the year before. I mean, it was...
A bit?
I don't want to do any special pleading
4 million?
It was the hot... No, it wasn't 4 million down. It was the hottest weekend of the year. I think we could... I think it's not unreasonable to say that in the immediate aftermath of the Olympics, television viewing itself has gone down, because people gorged on television during the Olympics, and then they probably had a break from it. Finally, summer weather hit in the second half of August, and so on.
But as you yourself said, when there's a big event that will bring people together...
You don't want to think of the X Factor, it's not the 100 metres, it is the 10,000 metres.
So how much longer has it got then?
It's got years. It's on from the second half of August until Christmas. Think Mo Farah, not Usain Bolt, is my message.
Red or black? Okay, let's stay with the analogy.
I want to stick with the X Factor. I think it's an illusion to think that a show like The X Factor, if you like, goes like that. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. If you take Strictly Come Dancing, which had a very good autumn last autumn, 3 years prior to that, it had been going down year by year. And you sat here and said to me, if I was controller of BBC One, how much longer has The X Factor got? Has Strictly Come Dancing? But then it came back. That's down to particular series, who's in it, the talent in it, how well produced it is, what else is going on in the competitive...
What happens if the viewing figures are down again next week?
Well, I mean, the viewing if the viewing figures were down again next week, we would then have the following week. We are on until December with the X Factor. Well, what do you think? You think I'm going to take it out of the schedule and put some factual repeats on the Saturday night?
You know what the point is behind my question. How much longer has it got? And you are sitting here confidently saying...
I'm trying hard to answer the question, but because what I'm saying is, when you say how long has the X Factor got, it implies that there is a finite life, and it's a matter of now making an estimate, is it another 2 years, is it another 3 years? I don't agree with the proposition. That would be the equivalent, let us say, of saying to whoever was running an ITV at the time in 1969, in the event that Coronation Street had just gone down 5% year on year, how much longer has Coronation Street got? Well, it's still here in 2012.
But not every programmes do have a shelf life. And, it is cyclical. It might be that it gets rested for a while.
But the generation, I think there is an issue here, but I don't think it's the issue that you're getting at.
Go on then, what is the issue?
The generation of big entertainment shows that started in the early part of the last decade still dominate entertainment television. Strictly Come Dancing, I'm Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which, by the way, last autumn had its best season for some years. Comes from the same year as Big Brother, but has outlived certainly Big Brother on Channel 4. Obviously, the X Factor...
Viewers do want something new as well, don't they?
No,
they don't rely on X Factor.
That's the point I'm getting to in a way. The dominance of these big entertainment brands, I think, is an issue. I think it's an issue because it's very hard, and this is not just for ITV, it's true for BBC, Channel 4 as well, to grow other big entertainment brands of similar scale. They use up so much of the schedule, they use up so much of the budget, and yet audiences like them. And the level of audiences that we're at, even the X Factor as it's now launched, has launched with an enormous audience. Yes, it's not quite what it was in the same week last year. This time last year, the X Factor launched higher than the year before, but actually a little bit later
it came off. Bottom line, for the moment, you're happy.
It's not about one Saturday night. It's not even about one season. I'm saying, does our audience, does ITV's audience want the X Factor during the second half of the year occupying a prominent place in our schedule? Absolutely. The answer is yes, and I don't see any sign of that not being the case. Well, Red or Black has just started a second series, and it is, as you know, wrapped around the X Factor in two parts. I think Red or Black had a couple of unlucky breaks in its first run, as you probably, well-publicised stuff that we had some trouble with one or two contestants and so on, and that drew a certain amount of publicity. I think the new Red or Black, which is a pre-recorded show, is based on solid foundations. I think it's a good show. I think the audience grew during last Saturday. It's on again tomorrow night.
3.4 million, is that sufficient for you?
No, it peaked a much higher figure than that.
Was it 7:15?
Yeah, this was the hottest weekend of the year. Everyone was out in the garden.
Can't keep blaming the weather. We had the Olympics the weekend before, and it was hot then.
I'm only blaming it for last weekend. I'm not blaming it for any other nights. But no, come on. Early days of the second series of Red or Black, I think it's been well reformatted. The production team, it's a fantastic production, Red or Black, and I hope it will find a place in ITV schedules in the future.
You hope.
Well, of course I hope.
Was it just irresponsible? It doesn't sound as certain as, it is going to. Was it irresponsible to have a company like Wonga.com sponsoring it? A company that many charities, Martin Lewis including, who you've just given a primetime series to, says people shouldn't touch with a barge pole.
Well, look, we are a commercial broadcaster, ITV. Our programmes are free at the point of viewing to our viewers. They therefore need to be paid for by advertisers and sponsors. Here we all are at the Edinburgh Festival, a very you might say, BBC-ish bias to the Edinburgh Festival, which I fully understand. But we have to pay £3.5 billion a year to get those BBC programmes.
I understand that,
we
but
all
was it
do
responsible? That's the question.
No, I'm coming to that. I don't think it's for me, who, as the director of television, is responsible for commissioning our programmes, spending the £1 billion a year we spend on original content, nearly all of it original content, nearly all of it made by British producers. I don't think it's for me to kind of sit here and opine about the companies who sponsor our programs and advertise in our programs. Quite clearly, Wonga's sponsorship of Red or Black is compliant. It's absolutely fully compliant. They're a company who are entitled to sponsor programs on ITV and have done so. So that is one of the things, along with the advertising around the program, that enables us to make Red or Black and other Saturday night entertainment. So,
okay, all right. Well, I'll leave that point now. I suppose that's one of personal. All right. Let's just take a clip. Hang on, I'm just going to just check, see if we've got any updates. I want to turn to entertainment now, whether you agree with Jay Hunt's assertion that entertainment is a market failure genre.
Well, I'm not sure what she means by it, actually. Entertainment's really good business.
Have you not asked her?
No, I haven't. I must remember to. I think she may mean something slightly similar to what I just said.
Yeah.
That if you take... I was at a thing the other night where we were talking about kind of, entertainment, British, UK entertainment, what a great export it's been. Dancing with the Stars in America, American Idol, The X Factor in America. This fantastic thing going about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire of British formats conquering the world. We're all so proud of it. We all think it's a great thing. Actually, those go back a little while, and it's becoming harder, and it is harder, and we're not finding them now. The Voice, for instance, is in fact a format from overseas. It's an import. We're starting to import them rather than export them. If you take, I know The Voice, launched very big earlier this year. If you take The Voice out of the equation, entertainment shows that have launched very big, homegrown formats devised here in the UK, whether you're talking about ITV or the BBC or Channel 4 or Sky, there haven't been that many in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm talking about juggernaut style.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about. There's a lot of really good entertainment that we have and that others have. Shows that we have like Take Me Out or The Cube that we love and that we're proud of. Well, Superstar's another thing again, but I'm talking about the ones that I would describe as the big juggernauts of entertainment. They are hard to find. They're not coming along in large numbers. There's a lot of production companies out there. The very best creative minds, whether you're talking in whichever, Endemol or Talkback Thames or ITV Studios or whatever, and it is proving hard to find big new entertainment
Is that
formats.
why then you're looking back to programmes like Surprise, Surprise, for example?
Well, I mean, the Surprise, Surprise is back this autumn, and we're really glad that it's back this autumn. I think I've been asked about this before, and I've talked about this before. I think it's one of those ones where common sense prevails. There's a kind of balance to strike here. You shouldn't rule out bringing back titles, because you can bring back titles and give them a whole new lease of life, and people will love them. We have All Star Family Fortunes. We have Mr. and Mrs. coming back again that we never stopped doing. We've been doing for some years. But obviously, you don't want to fill your schedule entirely with revived titles, and often the better thing to do is not to choose the revived title. I mean, I can think of a perfect example of that. It's not in entertainment, but if I go back, whenever it would have been 2 or 3 years ago, we were offered Downton Abbey. We were also offered the revived Upstairs, Downstairs at the time, and we looked at them both and thought, well, Upstairs, Downstairs, the revival's tempting because you get a great announcement. You get much more coverage on the announcement because it's a familiar brand. But often, you later come to regret that, and we went with Downton Abbey.
Did you regret Superstar? Because obviously that was on the slide at the Beeb. I mean, that was one that came over.
No, I didn't regret Superstar, but also Superstar I put into different categories. When you say that was on the slide at the Beeb, Superstar was significantly different from the Andrew Lloyd Webber shows that we did at the BBC, which, by the way, I commissioned. So I had a hand in that back in the BBC days, as Elaine Bedell did. But Superstar was different, and it was creating it was casting a leading part for an arena tour of Superstar, which is something quite... All those other ones, where they were West End productions, it was different, it was scheduled differently, it was different in many ways. And, again, I thought it was a fine production, Superstar. In Ben Forster, it found an actor I believe will be a brilliant Jesus. I was great to be able to do a show with Dawn French, I thought was wonderful, Jason Donovan.
So why didn't
Mel
it work
C,
then?
we had a great panel. Well, Superstar played in a period that was a difficult and challenging period for all broadcast, certainly both the mainstream channels. It was the period between the end of the Euros and the beginning of the Olympics. And it lasted about 3.5 weeks. So, without wanting to get into it in slavish detail, you couldn't start a 6-part run, you couldn't start an 8-part run. You wanted to look for an event and something that would do something in a sense happened in quite a short period of time and made an impact. And Superstar fitted that well, and it fitted well with the sort of build up to the arena tour, which starts next month at the O2. And I was glad to do it, and I thought it was a good show, and I thought it created good talent. The ratings, they didn't hit the highlights. I agree. That in a sense comes back to exactly the point that I'm making, that the launch of new entertainment shows. We did another show in that period that we really liked called Let's Get Gold. And Let's Get Gold was about sporting teams. It was a brilliantly produced show. It looked great. And it was getting like 2.5 million viewers. But there was nothing to be ashamed of in that show, not at all. It was a really good show.
So where are the opportunities then? To move it on, because I've got quite a few more questions on other subjects. Where are the opportunities to come for people in that genre?
Well, starting with the biggest opportunity is to come up with the next big juggernaut entertainment format. Of course. That's what we must and will always be looking for.
And who will you go to for that? Would you go to Kevin Ligo or Simon Cowell?
You would buy a big entertainment format from anybody who had one. And I think that's a loaded question, Kate.
Yeah, which I might follow up on.
But there would be circumstances in which you would be better to buy it not from a supplier of previous big entertainment formats, but from somebody completely different. And I'm going to explain why that is, because it doesn't necessarily follow that the place that came up with the last big one will come up with the next big one. I'm going to give you a perfect example of this. One of ITV's biggest hits of the last 20 years was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Well, if you'd thought after Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, let's go back to that company the next year to get the next one, you'd have been disappointed. They didn't come up with the next one, to be absolutely honest. And that is often the case. So, but would I go to Kevin Ligo? Yes, of course. If ITV Studios have the idea, would I go to Simon Cowell? Yes, of course. Would I go to a range of other suppliers? Absolutely, because the value that lies in and the uniqueness of a really big entertainment hit means you can't be fussy about where it comes from.
Okay, some quick fire questions, because I'm running out of time and I want to get some answers to these. Tom Bauer, Sweet Revenge, The Intimate Life of Simon Cowell. Have you read it?
I haven't actually, no.
You haven't? Okay, well, he says, without Cowell, your ratings would sink. Do you agree?
Well, you can't have it both ways. You just told me that with Cowell, our ratings do sink. So no, ITV's a very broad channel and has strength in depth.
Where does all this come from? There's a lot of criticism, and I've got quotes from Broadcast and Lisa Campbell. A lot of people criticising this reliance, as they put it, on Simon Cowell. You should be doing more with ITV Studios. Just to put that to bed, because I'm aware I want to move on to people's questions, but just that whole, where does that criticism come from on this relationship?
People used to say that. I thought people had stopped saying that because they used to say it when he was in Britain's Got Talent in the spring and the X Factor in the autumn, but he's not now. He's in Britain's Got Talent in the spring and he's not in the X Factor in the autumn. So if you put together the number of weeks of an ITV year in which Simon Cowell is on air, it's not that many weeks because of the nature of the scheduling of Britain's Got Talent with its strip, semi-final, final, strip all done in 1 week. So I kind of thought that people had stopped asking that. But if you're asking it again, I'll say again, no, we're not over-dependent on Simon Cowell, but we admire him enormously. He's done great things for ITV.
All right. Last year, you were a huge admirer of Adrian and Christine. You sat here in this spot saying that they would be here on Daybreak. They're obviously not. What happened?
Well, I mean, I meant what I said when I said it, and I am a huge admirer of Adrian Charles, who did a fantastic job on our football and in the Euros, I thought, and I'm a big admirer of Christine Blakely, who did a great job earlier this year on Dancing, and I will be back again doing that early next year. But although I meant what I said when I said it, breakfast is a competitive area. It's an area in which we want to compete. We know that it's difficult to get right. We know that breakfast viewing habits...
Why can't you? Why does BBC Breakfast trounce you?
Well, BBC Breakfast has not always been ahead of ITV Breakfast, and our aspiration should be to be the most successful breakfast show. It is to be the most successful breakfast show. What we do know is that breakfast viewing habits are very slow to change. And I know, because when I was at the BBC, ITV was ahead of breakfast, and then we made some changes to BBC Breakfast, and it slowly took over and then has gone ahead. And obviously our aspiration is that we slowly increase, and we want to be a market leader as we do in anything. But as you I'm sure know, we have a new presenting lineup starting on September the 3rd. That's very imminent. We have high hopes and great beliefs that we can take it further.
Okay. I will be coming to questions, of course, a few other issues on multi-platform, but I think I'm going to leave those. I'd rather take a look at what you have coming up this year. Your thoughts on that very quickly as you look at it?
I think there's some great stuff in there. I'm really excited about it, and I hope it does well. But it's the very nature of television none of us know, So,
Yeah.
but we think there's a really, really good autumn season coming up and beyond into early next year.
Just don't introduce Prince Harry to Keith Lemon. All right. Okay. Should we just take a few questions if we can? I am expecting some. Has anyone got any questions? I can't quite see. Jonathan.
Jonathan Shallett, Royal Global. Please tell me about the upcoming Downton Abbey, which is my favourite show of the year.
Well, I can't give away too many secrets, Jonathan, but I can tell you I think it's going to be brilliant. And I've seen a number of episodes, and I think it's on top form. And I think, Shirley MacLaine is going to be a treat, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm not telling you much, I'm afraid. But I can't give you plot lines.
Any more? Oh,
Yes.
no.
Peter York. Adrian Gill said recently that when ITV was at the top of its game, it was providing brilliant working class family entertainment. That was what it was about. Is that definition remotely resonant or relevant for you now?
Oh, well, Adrian's got a great feel for the working classes, of course. I don't know. He's talking in rather old-fashioned terms, isn't he? I do not sit at my desk at ITV and think, what have we got for the working classes? Because I don't think that the nation thinks like that. I'm not sure if I'm saying yes or no, because I can't remember your question.
Well, the downside of that would be, if it's not relevant, and if the working class, quotes unquotes, from Adrian Gill doesn't really exist and we're all fragmented, then he was saying you've had it, wasn't he?
I don't think so. I think that ITV programming, whether it's Coronation Street, whether it's The X Factor, whether it's a whole range of different things, is aimed at the broadest possible audience. And one of the fantastic things about television, you say this about the Olympics, is that it brings that huge audience together and creates a common experience that doesn't try to divide people into working classes and middle classes and upper classes. I'm not saying that the terminology that we use hasn't changed over the years, but I'm saying absolutely that I do not sit at my desk and think in those terms.
Will you be looking for that? Again, thinking for people sitting here, we'd be looking for that more programmes that have that feel-good factor, that are unifying rather than divisive.
Kate, that's different. The feel-good factor's that's a different thing again, isn't it?
How do you define what the Olympics then did for us as a viewing nation?
Well, I mean, much has been said about it, and I don't think I've got anything fresh to add, but it obviously had a fantastic feel-good feel. I don't think that we, and this would not only apply to me, but to any other channel, should now sit down and think there's a new mood around, let's come up with lots of feel-good programming. I bet we'd fall flat on our face if we did that. It's like a couple of years ago when we went into the recession. And I remember various people say, because we're in a recession, you need to come up with much more happy programs. And I thought, no, that's far too glib. You know, people rightly have an appetite for a huge range of programs on television. One night they'll want to see, the most wonderfully celebratory entertainment. The next night they'll want to see a really dark drama with grisly murders in it. Our tastes are complex, and we want television to respond to all of them at different times.
Okay.
Mimi Turner from Northern Shell. I wanted to ask Peter, it was really great to see a fabulous, glossy, gorgeous promo and, to understand the investment that goes into that. One of the things it seems like you see sometimes when you look at ratings is that you can make an enormous punt on a programme in which people have invested a lot of money. Any broadcaster can do this. And the ratings are different from what they would have been 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's almost as though 4 million is the new 6 million. And, some days you look at the overnights and you see that, really performances that you wouldn't have expected in the 2 years ago at 9 o'clock for any broadcaster. And I'm wondering for ITV, how you address that problem, and do you think is it a problem that you see, and how do you sort of look at that problem as to resolve it?
Well, I mean, in a sense, what you say is true, because in the days when there are only 3 or 4 channels, it didn't take much effort to get 8 or 10 million viewers because there wasn't anything else to watch. Was that a better thing? Well, it wasn't a better thing for the viewers. It meant they had less choice. And I would argue that in those days, an indifferent program could get what, by today's standards, would seem like a very big audience. Today, we have to earn audiences, and I think that forces standards up and encourages people to make better programs, but therefore that the audience you get, because they've had so much more choice, in a sense, has more value to you. So you're absolutely right, Mimi. There's no, you could easily argue that 4 million is the new 5 million and 5 million is the new 6 million, but I don't think that's only a problem. I think that means that quite simply there's more choice for viewers, which is a good thing, and those, let's say 4 million, really want to watch your programme. After all, they've got a lot of other things to choose from. And anyway, even if you do regard it as a problem, we're never going to turn the clock back. We're never going to go back to the days of 3 channels and a sort of, half-decent sitcom back in 1976 wakes up one morning and gets 12.5 million viewers. That's not going to happen.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Quick final question. Danny Cohen described BBC One, high quality, entertaining, teach you things you didn't already know. Just what would you leave us with in terms of our takeaway thoughts on ITV and how we're going to see it in the coming year?
Gosh, you didn't give me any warning of this. Well, I mean, high quality, of course, entertaining, but more than entertaining, aiming to strike a range of notes and do a range of things across all the big recognised genres, both familiar and new, with new things coming on aimed at our audience, but always and endlessly saying, we're very proud of the ITV1 schedule and output. There's lots in it that's very good, but we can improve it. We want to keep improving it. And in order to do so, we need program ideas. We're in the business, and I think as a channel controller, you're constantly in the business of selling your channel to people who could take their best idea to anybody else.
I certainly think
that's why I'm here today, to say we want to do great things, and we can only do them with people who've got great ideas.
There you go, plenty of opportunities. Thank you very much, Peter Fincham, for joining us.